Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about special agents. We're certainly going to be talking about, the NSA and infiltrating countries and things like that. No, we're not. We're going to be talking about AI, of course, clearly. And to do that today, I have a very special guest. You have to know him. He's all over the place when it comes to design systems and AI. He has a great post that he posted, or article that he posted last week about this thing, getting a lot of eyes on it. I have Kaelig here. Kaelig, good to see you. Again, thanks so much for being on the show today. I want you to introduce yourself to the audience and let everybody know who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Donnie. Hey, everyone. My name is Kaelig. I am based in near Seattle, Washington, West Coast, best coast. And I've been doing design systems. I told people there's going to be some spicy takes. So it starts now. And I've been doing design systems for 10, 15 years. And most recently, I was doing AI and design systems at Intuit. And I wanted to capture the experience I've had over there. I've been very lucky and fortunate to be able to spend multiple weeks on solving a specific problem to try and automate parts of our design system manufacturing process. And yeah, now I'm kind of going around and trying to see what other people have in mind when it comes to design system automation, how to leverage agentic workflows in the design system work, and also where humans fit in there, because that's the biggest part here. And so hopefully we can talk about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's something that's coming up a lot in a lot of different facets. I was speaking with someone today about the question of, when you have all these people that are, effectively vibe coding, and that's turning into the job in a lot of places. It's like, well, what do you actually need me for? And, there's lots of questions about, okay, well, where's the job security in there? So I'm really looking forward to getting into that. Of course, the East Coast is the best coast. We're going to fight about that immediately. No. So let's the reason that I brought Kaelig in here, not just because I do highly value his expertise and opinion in the space, certainly, but topically is this article that he posted. I did get an early glance at, which I was already floored by within the first 15 minutes of, because, you see a lot in this space. Right. You see a lot of things on social media, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And everything is just these little blips and blobs, and no one's really going into the details. And I appreciate the details, and in fact, one of the things that I definitely want to get into is this whole thing about agents, because it took me a while to just understand what the fucking agent was. Right. I knew there was AI out there. But I'm like, what are these agents? What are these things that we keep talking about? How do you spin up an agent? Like, it was so foreign to me, because all I knew, but trying to figure this whole thing out, was like, I just chat with a chatbot and it responds and maybe it does some things and that's it, right? And then I see all these workflows about people doing things with agents. So let's maybe help out the audience in here too, because I'd like to think that there's going to be people out there that hear this word agents and are potentially confused by agents. So could you break down, when someone says an agent and when they're spinning up agents and all that kind of stuff, what does that mean?
Yeah. There's multiple definitions and there's multiple types of agents, but I would say for the most part, it's a AI persona that is tasked to do a certain job, and that can not only give you an answer back like the good old first chat GPT versions that were essentially telling you, giving you an answer to a first prompt. And that was the age of prompt engineering quite a bit, where you give it an order, it spits something back. Agents can also use tools, so they have access to tools such as using a browser, searching the web, looking into your data, editing your data, and all of these things accessible to the Gen AI model turns it into an agent.
Okay. Now, turning something into an agent, I mean, again, spinning up an agent, things like that. I'm thinking about, GUIs, for example, right? When I want to start something up, I hit a button to start something up, right? And in the parlance that I'm seeing in here, and I'm still personally grasping on it, spinning up an agent, from what I understand it, is effectively having a markdown file that describes what this role is. Is that accurate, or is there something
It can
more?
be, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be.
What else? What else is involved in this? Because again, the mental model for me. I mean, I see it when I'm working in Cursor or Claude, and it says, "Oh, I'm going to spin up a sub agent," and it just kind of does it automatically, and I don't know what it's doing, and I want to kind of know, where did it get that information from? How did it, where's that process sitting? Can I put it together? I'm assuming I could do it myself. I'm finding it really hard to find out how, and I'm hoping this is, of course, dovetails into the actual post, because you set up several agents in this workflow that I absolutely want to get into, but I want to make sure that I understand, as a dumbass here, about how a person actually sets up an agent so that this workflow that we're about to talk about can actually execute these tasks. So what does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So I like to think of an agent as a coworker.
Okay.
And in fact, I speak about a team of agents, an agentic workflow that has multiple teammates. And the way it works, so to spin up agents, you need what we call an AI harness, which is, in that case, what I've been using is called Cloud Code. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this has heard of it or used it. And Cloud Code has the power of not only chatting with you, but also to spin up entire teams of agents. So all you have to do is to ask it to spin up those agents, to spawn or to create agents or sub agents. If you're really confused about what this is, you can also ask it to explain to you, look, what is this? Like,
Sure.
What are these things? And you were talking about Cursor, and Cursor sometimes spinning up sub agents. It's not all a black box. You can get some introspection into exactly what each sub agent is doing. Most of the time, you don't need to know. And in fact, that's, I think, what agentic coding is really getting towards, is that less and less you need to look at the code. What you have to reason about is architecture, is things like the interfaces between the modules of your program, between the bits of your design, and user flows, so that then you can teach the AI to build those blocks, assemble them. But do you need to know exactly what's under the cover of those blocks? It's becoming more and more irrelevant.
Interesting. I mean, that makes me feel uneasy about not knowing what's going on. I mean, for a very long time, and I'd like to think that, where my expertise has come in, I know I said I was a dumbass earlier. I'm half joking. But my expertise came in was from knowing all of the things, right? I felt a lot of pride knowing how to write a regex or how to manage the JavaScript date function, because a lot of people didn't, and it feels very uncomfortable to kind of release the control and be like, okay, AI, spin up the agents, and not know necessarily exactly what it's doing in the background in order to achieve that goal. It's like, where do I come in? So and you kind of talked about at the top of the show about, okay, where are the humans in this loop. And I think this is a good segue into your article, because in the article, if you haven't read it, you should absolutely read it. I'm going to put it in the description for this video. But in the article, one of the things that you do call out is all the areas in which the agent doesn't know what to do, and you need a human to effectively unblock it, to make the decision to move forward, right? And I think, I'm just, again, thinking about the workflow, and then there's a lot involved in that post, but I'm thinking about the workflow of, I guess, when it's finally successful. I'm going to skip ahead to it being successful, because we'll talk about, the challenges in there. But when it was actually finished as successful as a project for you, and you had these moments where it would stop, how do you kickstart it again? Does it start from the beginning again? What does that look like in the human part of this whole thing?
Yeah. So like I said, I like to think of agents as coworkers, and in that case, think of a team that you would contract.
Okay.
And it would do the job and then move on.
Okay.
And every time I wanted to, there's multiple ways of doing this. In my case, I wanted to get to a point where I could contract that team on with a fresh perspective, no memory of what happened before, and it would come in. And a bit of context about the article is essentially, I've tried to understand, how do we get a Figma file, go from Figma to a React component with a quality bar that was about 90% of what I expect for the quality of a design system component for a multinational company like Intuit, that has, half of Americans at some point are going to be using Intuit products. And so the quality bar in accessibility, performance, and visual, the way I looked at it is that I want that to be pretty high. Yeah. So how do we get that to work on any type of component? And so the approach I took was, I'm going to code it first myself. And by coding, I did not touch the line of code, but I wanted to see, is it possible to reach that bar if I'm the orchestrator, if I'm the director of a team of agents, or mostly it was just me prompting AI to do its thing. And I reached that. I was very happy with the result. In fact, it took me, 20 hours of coding, something like that. It was a little bit intense, but that could have taken me weeks, right, if I had coded it by hand. And so very happy, even did a few things better than I would have. And then I was like, okay, how do I take all of that process, everything I just went through, and the tooling that I use, like Storybook, the Figma console MCP, some accessibility checks, et cetera, how do I put my 20 years of experience in front-end development and bring that into a team of expert agents, those special agents that you're referring to, and make that work for not just the component that I had built, but also for any component. Yeah. And again, without any memory. Imagine this team is just onboarding today, and you're just hiring them, and they don't have time to know about the values of the company, the whole, like, why the world exists, etc. Like, there's no time for Carl Sagan type, like, deconstruction of the whole thing. It's just, this is your task. Come in, solve the problem, and then bugger off. And so this is, that was the approach here. No memory, except it knows a lot about the design system itself and how to solve certain problems and harness certain tools, but it doesn't have that much memory aside from that.
Right. And I think, well, so I'm still wrapping my head around the whole thing here, in that I think that the big turning point in the process of you trying to figure this out was this whole context, like, moving. Like, there's stuff that this agent knows that this other agent needs to know, and things were getting lost in between that connection. So your answer to that was everything was to be done in documents and files, effectively, right? Where once an agent was completed with their work, they're actually writing this file that says, okay, here's what I've found, or here's the next steps we need to take on. This next agent who's responsible for acting on those things would then look at that document and have all that so you don't lose anything, right? Now, it, what was you? I think it was 60% loss. Was that? Did I find that in your doc, or was it somewhere else?
I can't remember. There was, I mean, the thing is, because it's non-deterministic, sometimes I made a change to the team, the personas, and I tried it again the next day, and it would. I remember it was like take 14 or something like that. I had a big regression, and it's just because it was a Thursday or something. I don't even know. Like sometimes AI is going to completely ignore a set of instructions. So the way to mitigate that is to have clear contracts between the team members, and each team member is expert at something particular. So one of the agents might be an accessibility expert, another one might be a architecture expert. There's one that is very good at navigating the Figma file and making a full report out of it. And why do we delegate that to an agent, to a specific agent? Because you can feed it with very, very specific ways of solving that problem, and then spit out a document, a report that then can be consumed by other agents who don't need to know about all of these skill sets, because you have a limited amount of specialization and knowledge that you can cram into an agent. It's very hard to do an agent that's good at everything, even with skills. And I mean, it's getting better and better, but specializations still have a lot of value. But again, they need to sometimes to chat about those things, or to deliver a report and get out. And in that case, yeah, there were some cases where they just lost the plot. So my goal was to repeat the process of running that team of agents, give it a Figma file, see what comes out of it, and does it meet the quality bar on X, Y, and Z? If not, then and every time there was problems. But what I would do is that I would ask the agent team to reflect on everything that just happened between when I gave it the Figma file and when it spat out the React code. What workarounds did they take? Yeah. Where did they encounter a hurdle, or where did they have to look for documentation somewhere and didn't find anything that was a cul-de-sac? And when were they blocked and they had to research take other paths to do certain types of research? And then in the output, I would also judge, is it accessible? Is it using the tokens? Is it using the correct design language? Is it using the libraries that the design system already uses, so that we're not introducing new dependencies that do exactly the same thing as another dependency? So taking all of this into account, ask for an introspection. And then I would take that big introspection, it was a massive report, and I would feed that back to the agent team builder that is in charge of creating that team, essentially.
Oh, so you're okay. Let me start. I think this is where the piece that I was missing here is that there's a thing that is the onset of putting together the team, right? Is that basically what we're saying? Is that okay? You know, here's where we're about to start out here. Here's the plan. And agent team builder, you're gonna take the plan and understand, okay, here are all the roles that I need to fill for this orchestration.
Yeah, please. And then optimize those roles. Create maximize the quality and the speed and the efficiency of those employees or agents.
Okay.
And every time they screw up, find a way for that to not happen. Or every time there's something that seems inefficient, like I remember there was a time where they just kept using a certain MCP, and that was so token heavy. The introspection allowed to see that. And then as we saw that the the amount of token being eaten. Like imagine seeing an agent spending 10, 15 minutes on trying to figure out if the menu opens.
Right. Well, the box
Like
shadow,
that's
I think I saw in your thing as well. It was just spinning on the box shadow, right? Yeah.
yeah, there was a bunch of stuff that happened like this where it's just they were spinning their wheels on some stuff that has no value.
Right.
So the next time the agent builder fixed that, found like what is the best way, how they solve that problem in the end, and then embedded that method as like this is the way to go. Like every time you're trying to solve this problem, just go for the fastest and best way.
Right.
Yeah, and then towards the end, after 16 runs, in total, I didn't put that into the article, but in total, I put something like 20-ish runs where it was iteratively improving the team. And by the end, I was really happy with the result. Like we're talking like production, quasi production ready stuff with maybe a couple hours of a designer and a developer, making a few changes in the browser.
Yeah.
And then you're good to go. Like this is really high quality.
Yeah.
But with unit tested, obviously, accessibility testing. The last thing I didn't do because I didn't have the skill available from the content team, but content strategy would have been a nice addition. That's one of the things I would have added. But other than that, yeah, it was using all the front-end best practices that the team had, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And so that's, again, the piece that I was missing was that, okay, so you're not directly saying what each role is. The agent builder is effectively...
No, I am.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I did create that.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I guess was confused on, is that, okay, you have the agent builder, and then they would spawn out these agents, but then you're defining what each role is in the agent builder. Is that where that's going?
Yeah, the agent builder is in charge of building that team, but those roles are predefined. And in fact, at some point, the shape of the team was initially 8 agents. Oh, sorry, 9 agents. And there was a token verifier agent that I really thought that was going to be so useful. And in my first runs, it seemed to be pretty useful. And then I discovered while writing the article, because I was like, okay, I need to really understand exactly what's happening. What are the contracts between those? Because I've iterated so much on it. I've lost sight of exactly how things are going between my very first, like, it's the weekend, I'm just playing around with agent teams for the first time. I had already built agent teams, but for design systems for the first time, to after 20 iterations, what it actually is. I needed to understand it better. So this article, actually, I wrote it kind of for me as well.
Sure.
To be like, okay, what did I actually build here? Because that's really good. It's giving me what I want. But the what was it? Oh yeah. So one of the agents was slacking by the end of it, and so I was like, okay, I gotta fire
this agent. Yeah.
this agent. It's spun up for nothing,
right?
Which was so interesting. And so in the future, now I know that it's nice to define those roles and to think about specialization and feedback loops and how to make them more efficient. But also you need some sort of observability of what's going on between those, which ones are at work versus not. And yeah, it was I encourage everyone to try to at least do it, like 1, 2, 3 agents, and not one, obviously, but like 2, 3 agents on a team, and see how they communicate, what kind of information they exchange. Take a look at that, and it's fun.
Yeah. I'm going to pick something out that you said over there. You mentioned that you were like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. I need to dive back in and find out. Remember earlier, he was like, you don't need to know what's going on back there. Well, there's points in time where you want to know, right? I mean, he said it himself, right? I'm going to get into something that's kind of hot here, okay? Because we promised the audience hot. And by the way, audience, I'm looking at chat. If you're watching live, go ahead and post a question in there. I'll definitely ask Kaelig. But here's the hot thing that I want to bring up here. Why start in Figma? And I'm going to say this because don't we already know and for the example you have in there, don't we already know what a dropdown is, how it's supposed to behave? Aren't the rules existing already, especially when it comes to the presentation of that dropdown, all driven by tokens, right? In a best case practice. those values can change depending on different themes that are coming in. So all of the presentation ends up being fluid. The behavior is already kind of defined. What is Figma doing other than potentially just being helpful for a designer to visualize it? What
Yeah.
is your input on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, a bit of context is probably useful. I would say what I built probably is not needed at most companies. It is a function of the context I was in. So imagine a design system team that is trying to unify 4 major brands componentry and bring them into one set of components. Getting a sense of all the use cases across 4 major business units that are all multi-billion-dollar brands. So that's, for context, like I don't work there anymore, but it's the Intuit brand, Credit Karma, TurboTax, MailChimp, and QuickBooks, and then a few other like sub brands. But essentially, you want to capture all of the use cases across all of these and bring them into one single set of components. The menu component with sub menus, search, filtering, what was there? There was multi-select, single select with a radio, single select, multi-select with just a check mark, not a checkbox, but also another use case with a checkbox, icons before, after, little badges. So many use cases are not just, you can't just slap a select menu on this, even though selects are getting a lot better thanks to the latest web
Changes,
standards.
yeah.
And so there was about, I would say, I don't even know how many months Jen, who is the designer who worked on this, I don't know how many months she spent on it, but I would say at Intuit, that process was very Figma first, Figma heavy.
Sure.
And then developers would come in and build the components later.
Right.
That said, that team of developers was so busy building AI infrastructure and delivery pipelines for the design system that component work was not always happening either synchronously or shortly after. It would take sometimes quite a bit of time. There was a bit of a gap between designer designs and developers develop. And I thought there was an opportunity there to accelerate, to get to a PR, to a pull request very quickly from the designs. And of course, it's not, the designs by themselves don't tell the whole story. So you need to use a bit of judgment. You need to annotate some of those designs as well, or when it comes to interactions, maybe sometimes accessibility as well.
Yeah.
But that's the context I was in. I would say that's not my preferred context to work in, by the way. Like I prefer when design and development are working very close to each other. And from the beginning, they're both iterating and prototyping and shitting the shit. And and so in a perfect world, I wouldn't say this doesn't need to start in Figma. It could very well, but it should get into development way faster. But giving that tool, like for example, if Jen wanted to test an assumption she had on how that component should behave in the browser, and she's like, I can't tell that story in Figma. It's just there's too many micro interactions. There's the keyboard interactions. It's very, very hard to get to that point in Figma. She could use something like Figma Make, or she could use that tool, that team of agents, and see it in the browser appear a couple hours later, and see a quasi-production quality version of that, and then potentially course correct without having to, get something in the calendar for the developer team, who is, like I said, very busy on other things.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the context. Hopefully that helps understand, like, why would you even build this? Because that's a fair question.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, I think in this day and age, for folks that are at our levels, you need to show proficiency in AI. That's what the businesses are looking for. I think your post does a really good job of showing the proficiency there. Me saying that I have no idea what it's talking about is also doing a really bad job. But the that's, I think, very necessary, even if it's just an exploration, right? It was the weekend kind of situation for you, trying to spin this thing up, see if it has legs and can and walk around and do some things. Because the other thing that's important about this is you know, as this post is getting traction, it's very clear that this is going to be something that other people are going to try, and hopefully they kick the tires and they figure out what works and what doesn't. And what we're seeing in some cases is sometimes we are over-indexing on things. I'm not saying that we're going to over-index on what Kaelig has done here, but we've over-indexed on some things that end up being potentially not the best in the directions. And because this is the wild west, you know, who knows what direction things are going to be taking in. So I just kind of like a grain of salt, I would say, about, hey, you know, maybe this isn't the right thing for your company to do. Kind of like what Kayla was kind of saying in there is just like, yeah, it's maybe you don't do this, but you know, it might be helpful for you if it's the right organization and all the you know, all the dominoes are there that make sense for you. Then sure, I mean, give it a shot, right? I mean, I guess that there's no harm in that, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, every 3 months, completely reset your assumptions about what agents and models can do. It's moving more and more towards a world where you have, I would say, one agent that with a massive context window that you give access to, you give it access to a lot of tools, and then it can pick and choose how to solve that problem by itself. And then it runs for a long time, and then it spits out the best thing. Because those models are getting way more intelligent generation after generation. It seems like it's going that way. I would say if I was to redo it again with Claude 4.7 Opus and ChatGPT 5.5, I would probably reduce the number of agents and see with the 1 million token window, because I barely played with it with the 1 million token window size. So that would probably be like maybe 4 agents instead of 8. I don't know. It's something that, you know, I would have had to try, because the thing I can't share is the code. Sadly, it's into its property, but hopefully with that article, somebody can feed that article into an LLM and say, hey, build me this thing, but for that use case.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you know, it's totally funny, actually, because so Brad Frost, who will be on the show, I think next week, actually, he posted just recently in his Slack channel about some project that was basically like, clone this website. Just have a couple of agents and clone the website. And that's I mean, kind of a world that we're sitting in right now, of this whole thing about selfware. I talked about this in a couple episodes before, about, you know, you see a piece of software that's out there, and it's either you know, got a paywall behind it, or it doesn't have the features you're looking for, or it's closed but not exactly. And having the ability to go ahead and just say, hey, that thing over there, make it for me. And it just, there it is. It's for me. And this makes it very interesting about, you know, even the work that we do in design systems, where you could look at another thing and be like, make that for me, right? That's kind of what I was talking about with the Figma situation. Is like, why would you use Figma? It's hey, I need the thing that they built over there in Spectrum for me. So go ahead and build that thing for me. Right. Plus, on top of, you know, what Caleb is saying here is that or in this article, sure, now we have a whole bunch of agents that are going to go ahead and make sure whatever that thing is meeting my standards, whatever those standards might be. Right. So with all of that being said, where are the humans left in all of this?
Yeah, we need to come to that side of the thing. So my initial goal was to see, can I automate everything? Like, can I just say, here's a Figma file, and then come back 2 hours later, and then here's a React component that's perfect and production ready? It turns out, after, I don't know how many runs, I tried for, I don't know, between 5 and 10, I think. I was hitting a plateau. with the human out of the loop completely. I just couldn't get the quality to match what we wanted. And then I was like, okay, where is there a failure mode here that the AI is just simply, it's not about being smart or being, or having knowledge. It's more about having that taste and sense of architecture, and data just doesn't tell the whole story. And a human is very good at making those decisions or pulling in other experts from the company. Say, hey, how are we doing this? Like, how would an agent, like, I mean, I know there's some work at Intuit to get agents to get that kind of context, to get access to that kind of context. But right now, agents are very much like, hey, I just joined this company. I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And it's like their first day, essentially, for an intern that's got a PhD in building design systems.
So wild.
Yeah. So the idea here is to find the failure modes in your agent team and to see where to inject the human taste and the human judgment. And so for this particular one, the human gate is the biggest one. So there's a few, but the one that I was interacting with the most was after it's read the Figma file, after it's done a first shot at doing a component architecture plan. And I think, I can't remember. I mean, this is so last week, man. I just keep
it's still far away.
But anyway, after that first pass, before writing any code, essentially, mm-hmm. It's just going to look at, okay, what is ambiguous here? What am I 50-50 on? And then you can ask it to just take a best guess on everything. Like, let's say you're a designer and you're like, I don't know what Popper.js versus floating UI means. Mm-hmm. Like, what is that? This is too React-y NPM dependency stuff. I don't want to touch that. Just give me the component. So you can ask it to do a best effort at making guesses for you. Or you can interject and say, no, this thing, yeah, let's discuss. Or sometimes you just know the answer on top of your head. Right. And so you would just give it. Or sometimes it's like, hey, what token should I use between this and this? Like, that's really weird because the Figma file tells me to use this token, but it doesn't translate into code the way it is encoded in Figma. So what do I do? And this is where a human is also very, very useful.
Yeah, I'd say so for sure. Now, talking about the tokens for a minute, and if you don't know, Kaelig is one of the co-chairs of the Design Token Community Group for the W3. What is there an intersection of design tokens and AI that you're seeing? Because the easy thing that people are saying is, oh, just have the AI generate the tokens. Like, that's not. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend that because I think there's a lot to be said about what the architecture is. I mean, I wrote about that in particular in the book, but where's the intersection for you in terms of I guess some of the work that the community group is doing, or just design tokens in general, and AI for you?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is, like I said, AI is a new junior contractor it's their first day, and you need to teach them as quickly as possible how to design, how do we do design here. And the nice thing about design tokens is that they can have a description, and even their naming convention can be a guidance for certain types of how would you make micro decisions on how to use backgrounds on surfaces and how to use accent colors and where. But the cool part, I think, is the description that can talk about use cases, that can talk about color contrast, that can bring up things that have to do with taste as well. And each token having a meaning and not just being a variable with a value, but really have a meaning associated with it, I think is where AI can be helped. And so we're seeing people building MCPs for their design tokens. There's also a question of, so if you point an agent at a component, it can figure out by itself the anatomy of the component and all the tokens that are being used in that component.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty token hungry. It's expensive, essentially. It's long. And what I've noticed when I was building the team of agents is that heavy work. So some agents are literally trained to be somewhat lazy. Or sometimes they're tuned because it's a peak hour on the data centers. They're tuned to be a little bit more lazy.
Yeah.
And so if you give them a task that they know, you know what, I'm gonna have to go search through all of these files and figure out by myself like how this thing is working, it might skip it.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
But if you give them some tools to have a deterministic analysis of the component and which tokens are in that component, it can answer those questions like what's the background for, I don't know, button primary.
Sure.
And then it can replicate that decision or trying to understand, like, make design decisions better by being able to ask all of these data points. So I'm seeing a lot of teams, the design system teams, invest in that. I'm seeing tools like Storybook, Knapsack, Zero Height, Supernova, all investing in that as well. I mean, I know there's other ways to teach AI how to design that. You can't just rely just on tokens, but I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think it's just going to say about how it's good to have clean data for the AI, right? So as reasoned with things like
garbage
that, right?
in, garbage out.
So what we've been working on for so long about semantic tokens and how important that is to before the AI, right? So that a person can look at a token and go, oh, I know what the heck to use that for, as opposed to some other, less clear name. Now we're seeing how much benefit that is to actually have semantic things, because now, it's the accessibility situation too. Remember in the beginning of all this, I think there was lots of talk about, make sure that your HTML is accessible for AI to read it. It's like, hold on a second. Do you remember the humans? Do you remember them? They were supposed to read it. So it's the same thing that we've been seeing here about the, trying to make it better for the AI, which hopefully in turn, of course, makes it better for humans, which was the whole point of it. I want to explain some of my thinking about how AI is going to help in the token space, the design token space, because now we have to disambiguate what we mean by tokens these days, unfortunately, because we have two kinds now. But the way that I think about it, and I've said it on the show maybe a couple of times now, but the way that I see a lot of the value is by hyper-personalization. And we've actually talked a little bit about this. I think maybe it was at Render, maybe a few years ago, about the way that there's security behind personalization. I think maybe your wife was working on some identification stuff. But but a while ago, and maybe we'll touch upon some of that with this conversation. But what I'm thinking about is, let's say that you have your Home Depot and you're about to open a market in China, and you need to convey the concept of Home Depot in China. But also there's a lot of asks for dark mode in China, because that it does better over there. It probably actually doesn't, but just let's say it does. So we need to express the entire ecosystem of Home Depot for the Chinese market, and also support dark mode all at the same time to open this up for to go to market or whatever. And thinking about that just for that particular market and trying to be international with it is a huge undertaking for just, a designer or a team of designers that maybe even Home Depot has. So you can imagine that there would be some sort of exercise, a huge one, to try to figure out, okay, what does everything look like? What does this look like? What does that look like? What are the values for this? And I did a small research study that actually found that on average, it takes about 2 hours to figure out what a value for a token is supposed to be. And I got that information by looking at different design systems, being like, okay, there's certain design systems that, have 100 tokens, maybe even 1,000 in Adobe's case. And I went out and had a survey years ago that asked and said, okay, how many tokens do you have in your system? okay, if you needed to make a new theme, let's call it the Easter theme, how long do you think that would take you, right? And then you just divide, right? You divide that number, and granted, it's very like unscientific, but it gets you a gist of what's going on, and
Also, Adobe had in the six-figure number of tokens.
oh yeah,
I don't know if they still do, but yeah,
they have too many tokens. I've talked to Garth over there, and he's like, yeah, it's it's crazy out there. But yeah, I mean that's the general number in terms of the folks that I've surveyed out there, just to get a ballpark of like, if you're going to be having hundreds of tokens, you need to provide a new expression. Well, how long do you think that's going to take? And like you can get a little bit of a measurement, which is going to be helpful. And when you look at that measurement, you go, well, now we need to support several different expressions. Home Depot, we need to do in the China market, we got to do it dark mode. And imagine another world where we could just have AI get close enough to go ahead and say, this is what it probably looks like. So because it knows, hey, this is what China's expecting, and this is what dark is supposed to look like, and I already know what Home Depot looks like. All that stuff, we can potentially synthesize that into an expression to then serve to that particular market. And yeah, we could have people that turn some dials and say, it needs to be a little bit more Home Depot, or it needs to be a little bit less dark, or whatever the heck that is. But I think for the hyper-personalization aspect, now I don't care. We can go ahead and launch in North Korea, right? Tomorrow, when you have that information, if they ever, give us information about what's going on over there. But launch what it looks like over there very quickly without thinking about the 2-hour kind of benchmark of each token. So what's your initial reaction to that idea?
Yeah. I think we're going towards a world where AI is making those decisions, and my approach would be to have a skill that knows how to use certain tools, or an MCP that has some instructions in there, custom rules that every time you need to apply a color or a margin or whatever stylistic kind of aspect, that it would go and use some tools to look at the database and hopefully make a decision. Or if it can't, give the human a set of options that are the closest. But then I'll go further. There are some times where the tokens just don't do the job, and it's going to result in bad design if you use the existing tokens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we need whichever agent is trying to make the decision to be given the option to go to the design system support agent, and to ask, hey, this is a use case that would be, here's a screenshot of what we're going to do. This is why it's bad design. Like, figure it out. Please, team, get back to us. For now, we're just going to use a raw value, or we're just going to get out of this, eject from the system just for this, because it's just better design.
Yeah.
And then for the design system team to get that support agent to structure that feedback in a way that humans can reason about, and then for that team to put together some sort of plan of how do we remediate that new use case that we didn't think about, but as like a design system consumer will need to have in there.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the realistic story that's in there about there's absolutely areas where we potentially miss on supporting something with the token, right? You'd like to think that we have the full coverage of of what we're doing out there, even with the 6-digit number that Adobe has of the number of tokens. You must have coverage, right, with six figures of tokens. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You need to ensure that we have escape hatches and ways of being able to get out of the system, but also in the wisdom that we've had over the years, we need to ensure that we get back to those things, right? We shouldn't just have those things live on as exceptions, forever. We should have some sort of history of those things that we can go back on, because we could also find a whole bunch of those little ones that actually end up becoming part of a token or a system or whatever that we can confidently identify.
Yeah, it's like the tree that falls in the forest. Does it make a sound? And if a token is not being used, and the design system team is not there, this
Doesn't really matter. Yeah.
And I'm writing a blog post right now about, and that's from my days of StarCraft playing competitively, and this idea of a fog of war, of there's a lot that you don't know about as a design system team, and it's only going to grow as agents are the main things building code, writing and building experiences. So when they're doing something that's escaping from the system, how do you know about it?
Right.
Is there a point of knowing about it, or do we call it a loss and it is what it is? Or do we have tools at this point that make it so cheap to know about it that we should have those feedback loops? And how do agents even report back? Do agents even know that they're escaping in the system, or are they just hallucinating and this is a normal path for them? Just they don't care. And then do you have remediation practices? Do you have ways to catch those accidental deviations? Because there's the agent decided to escape the system because it would lead to worse design if it used the system, or is it accidental and it just didn't know?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what designers are doing today, like developers.
Right.
The makers are doing that all the time. They might not know about everything in the system. There's just so much to learn about the design system. There's no way everybody can know everything about it.
Yeah.
And so there's accidents, happy little accidents, but how do you know about it as a design system team?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's I think we're talking about something that I'm also is probably one of my hottest takes right now. And my hottest take right now is actually in this world of AI, of do we actually need a design system as we've known it? And I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to convey what I'm trying to say in the least amount of words possible. But the thing that I've seen for a long time, I'm sure you've seen it as well, is all these little subsystems that come out. And one of the things that and just like you've mentioned, it's very hard for a design system team to see all of that all at once, or even just a little bit of it. And all these subsystems, they end up making stuff for their own needs all the time, which is completely valid, right? So what, especially in now where AI is driving a lot of those building forces, the design system team ends up being a bottleneck. This is kind of part of the article, trying to widen that neck. But is there a world where we kind of to your point, just let them build and then have the AI kind of synthesize into the system to show the agreement? The way that I think about this is like the old school button audits, right? You would see the 20 different buttons and you would go, clearly we need to go ahead and do something about this. So that audit, could we just do that naturally? And then the result of that happen naturally, right? Because we could imagine that, there would be systems in place, AI in place, that can go ahead and go through the entire system and go, okay, I've identified that as a button, that is a button, that is a button, and get all of the different specifications for those things, the criteria for those things, coalesce them into one area, figure it out, get some human in the loop to assess some of the finer points of it, and then, because it found all of those places, update it in all of those places. And now the system kind of organically gets created like it kind of does now. Because the system that we make is this is like different from, or maybe it's different between organizations, but for many organizations, that system is a system of agreement from all the people that are there in like this federated model. That like, oh, okay, we got everybody coming in here, great, this is what we're gonna make, okay, here it goes out. Where you take, kind of like the center point and don't make it all humans. Maybe there's one or two in there just to give a couple of checks and whatever, but everything coming in and out is just agents bringing everything in and out, maybe, right? As opposed to the stone tablets of, the button must look like this. Well, fuck off. I don't want the button to look like that, right? I got my own button that's doing exactly what I want it to do. And I feel like the lessening of control, just like what you said at the top of the show, removing some of the control out there so that the buttons kind of happen organically to the agreement of whatever the organization is happening, um, is an interesting concept to a system organically growing. How comfortable do you feel about that?
Yeah, so typically with agents, those communication loops do not exist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on us, design system practitioners, to reinvent those workflows so that they mimic certain governance interactions or agreement interactions that would have happened between humans, if they even happen. I don't think it's reasonable for a design system team to expect to see everything that's happening
Sure.
across all of design and all that. So, but it's becoming, if you 10x your output in prototyping and let's say 2x your output in production, you're going to have a lot more surprises potentially. And so how do we get those agents to communicate that back and to potentially reach some agreements by themselves? I don't know about that part. I would say for accidental deviations, we're probably going to move more and more towards self-healing code bases. I don't know about the Figma side of things, like if you would have self-healing in the canvas, but what is customer, like user facing, I think we're going to have those self-healing loops that would detect it, that, hey, this is just the same as any other design system button. We don't need an exception here. It should just be replaced. That's also going to be, we're going to get buy-in from people in security. We're going to get buy-in from people in performance on the front end side, because the fewer deviations you have, the smaller the bundle is for the user to download. And so the size of the page is impacted. So that's one of the Trojan horses I think we're going to get with design system teams wanting to have a foot in production code, is to remediate automatically all these things. Migrating components from an old version to a newer version, same thing.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get self-healing loops in there. It already exists in some like top companies that invest a ton of money on this. But I want to see it democratized, It's nice that the Metas of the world can do that themselves, because they have big budgets for platform work and UI platform work. But for the rest of the world, like this needs to come, in the workflows, in the processes already baked into the tools.
Yeah.
So that's my hope. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. But there's obviously opportunities for folks out there to tackle some of the stuff. Clearly, as Kaelig mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity of problems to solve in this space for humans. Right? Humans are still there, looking to solve problems creatively. That's what we need them for.
For another day.
Exactly. So we're getting close to the end over here. I want to give Kaelig the opportunity to go ahead and plug anything that Kaelig would like to plug. So go ahead, tell the audience what's happening with you there.
Hey, if you're in the Seattle area, I'm going to be talking about design tokens at Seattle JS in a couple of weeks on April 13th, I think. Is it 13th,
no, May?
14th?
We're past
May?
the 13th of April.
Yeah. Time. What is time? Okay, yeah, it's going to be on Wednesday, May 13th.
There you go.
And then I'll be at the next day. I'll be at the Friends of Figma, also in Seattle, and we're going to do a hands-on workshop. I'm not going to be presenting or anything, but I'm in for the ride, and hope to meet some folks over there. I'm going to be on Ben Callaghan podcast next week.
Hey,
on the question.
All right.
And aside from that, love to talk AI and design systems right now. Hopefully my article inspires you to build your own team of agents and see what you can automate versus what where humans fit in that loop. And aside from that, I'm on the job market right now interviewing. The job market for AI and design engineering is pretty hot. So If your team would like to talk to me, let me know. Slide into my LinkedIn DMs.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, super. Thanks again, Kaelig, for being on the show. And thank you for watching the show today. But before you go, help out that show, or this show, I should say, of course, by smashing that like and subscribe button before, just to get notified of the next time we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on the official Design Systems Discord, Design Systems Discord, by going to discord.ds.house. There's the thing on the bottom over there. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.
Cheers, Don.